want to get into this class and what happened on Wednesday, but I think the meat and potatoes of LSU is going to be Louisiana. But this year the state wasn't nearly as good as it is in some other years, and they went out of state more than I've ever seen and pulled in a lot of really good players.
It definitely was not as top-heavy as it's been. Right at this moment, there's not a 5-star in the state, according to the rankings. We'll see by February when all the rankings are done. You've looked at all the senior year evals or all-star games. Maybe we could see a Keyshawn Butte or Jaquelin Roy kind of slide up into that 5-star spot. But there's been times in Louisiana where there's 3 5-stars or whatever. So they knew early on that they had to go out of state, and good on them in a year where they were playing really well, because if you got to go out of state and you can pitch this kind of success, it'll work for you. And boy, they hit on some big ones. We'll obviously talk about whatever you feel like talking about, but not often. The Eric Gilbert one was the most surprising, obviously, because everybody thought he was going to Bama or Georgia or wherever. It wasn't going to be LSU. I think I had it on because Rusty for the Georgia site was there or something, but he was like, hey, when it happens, can you tweet this link or put it on our social media or something? I was like, yeah, and I had it on in the background, and they're like, and something happened. He's like, in LSU. I was like, did he just pick LSU? I think it was the first story I've never had like a pre-write on or something ready. I was like, oh, man, I need to scramble. This is only their biggest commitment in years. Dude's a freak.
So what's the story behind why he picked LSU, how his recruitment played out? Because it was like, I'm
going to make you...
I don't follow it as close as I used to, but I'd never heard of him when he picked LSU.
About to. Yeah. I'm gonna make younger Hunt right here head explode. He came and they sent me the audio, so he commits, and Rusty says, okay, you've got... check your audio, check your text. I sent you the interview. So I listened. Why'd you pick LSU? He says, nobody loves throwing the football more, especially to their tight ends, than LSU. I said, we've now
entered the twilight zone.
We are in the new era of LSU football. But he also said, look, and they listed him as an athlete on the signing day profile at LSU, but he views himself as a receiver. And, O talked about flexing him out and all that. That's what he's going to do. And I don't know if Thaddeus Moss is back next year, if he's not, but regardless, Gilbert can help you out, or he's going to be relied upon to a larger degree if Moss isn't there. He's big timer. This is one of the more instant impact guys you'll get.
I want to talk about the defections, and we'll do that here in a second, but more what I'd prefer to focus on is what they picked up on Wednesday in Philip Webb and Marcus Dumervil. They have struggled, in my estimation, in recruiting and developing tackles in this program, and it looks like Dumerville's got a chance to be a really good one.
Yeah, we knew that they had to have an offensive tackle, and look, this was a good close by James Craig, because wasn't a month ago or whatnot that they just had Marlon Martinez, who is Dumerville's teammate. He's an interior guy, really good player. Then they go get Xavier Hill, who at one point was committed to Bama. Having to clear my throat. I'm usually not up this early. They went and got Xavier Hill, who is also an interior player, but really good. Was once committed to Bama, decommitted, and goes to LSU. So where's the tackle?
Yep.
They stuck in on Dumerville all the way. Other schools wanted him, and Craig just did a good job of selling, look, you're a need, beyond Sadiq Charles and Deculus, and you've got Traore as a senior. What is your offensive tackle fit? You've got Dare Rosenthal, who I really like, but as a one-time D lineman that you moved over to offensive tackle. Cam Wire, guys like that. You've got to find some pretty quality depth to bring in, and I think Dumerville will be a good one. I'm really excited to see him at the All-American game, because at the opening, he was one of the more dominant linemen there. His stock skyrocketed, and then he plays for a St. Thomas team. They just beat the crap out of everybody. Yep. So I'm excited to see how far his games even come since the summer. I think he's at Under Armour. He might be at the All-American game. Either way, we'll get a week of at least looking at, how he looks side by side with some other really good O-linemen.
Ocheron loves his pass rushers. The stories of him recruiting Kaleb Von Chason are pretty legendary, showing up before 5 o'clock flight and whatnot. But Philip Webb fits that mold. Looks like a pretty big pickup on Wednesday. Yeah,
there's a few guys each class that Dave Aranda sort of hones in on, and Philip Webb was one of those guys this class, and he's got 3.8 something GPA. The coaches say he's by far one of the smartest kids who's come through football knowledge in their program at Lanier, which is where Tyler Taylor went. So Aranda kind of knew that staff. He knew how to get in on Webb early.
God, I forgot about Tyler Taylor.
Yeah, and so Lanier High. And they knew, Hunt, that you had to have some sort of stand-up edge rusher in life after Caleb On and Andre Anthony and Ray Thornton, these guys who are all getting older in the program. We've seen what Marcel Brooks can do from that other side. You get a guy like Webb and B.J. Ojulari, and both are real deal players. That was a great finish for them. Flipping Ojulari, a couple months ago whenever Eric Gilbert committed, and then reeling in Webb on signing day, which they felt great about Webb and Doomerville sort of during the whole lead up to signing day. So really them going public and announcing was just kind of the final straw of it all. They had already put in the work, and they weren't too worried about it going south on them.
I'm Palmer, Shea Dixon here on Off the Bench, filling in for Jordy and T-Bob. Talking recruiting, you got questions or comments, get them in the Bayou Ford Huddle. We will get to those as we move forward. I think a lot of things that go on Twitter and a lot of debates are kind of worthless, but I don't believe the brand of DBU to be worthless at all. And I was so thrilled that Grant Delpit won the Thorpe just because it continues to reinforce that brand. And you see it on draft day just about every year. You see it on All-American teams. You see it when they win the Thorpe Award. And essentially what it looks like to me is that Corey Raymond can walk into any house in the country and drop the label DBU and get the best defensive back in the country. If you look at the guys they've signed, I mean, I expect that Tre'Davious White's going to come to LSU and Derek Stingley's going to come to LSU. They're from the state. But when you go get Patrick Peterson and Kevin Tolliver and Grant Delpit and Jamal Adams and Jacoby Stevens, and in this class, the guy I want to talk about is Elias Ricks, who's has no allegiance to Louisiana, but because LSU's DBU, that's a guy you get in the boat pretty early and keep him. I mean, you talk to national recruiting players, and you've obviously probably spoken to Ricks. Is it as simple as I just want to go and play for DBU?
I mean, that's a major attraction. I think of all of the little, DBU, DLU, RBU, QBU, what do you want to roll with? That one's the one that seems to resonate the most with people. It's been one of those things, like you said, you go into Texas or Florida or California and you pitch that, and they see on Sundays, and even right now, look, with PP7 was out most of this year on a suspension or whatever. I guess he's been back for a little bit, but Honey Badger's having an unbelievable year. Jamal Adams has been lights out throughout the whole season. Tre'Davious White is amazing. He's funny. He's stealing Patriots or Ravens play call sheets.
That was good stuff.
You've got guys that seemingly are just the face of or one of the faces of their teams. That helps a lot. So yeah, I think with Ricks, they just got in on him early and said, look, we've got this tradition. You like the tradition? I'm in. Committed on Christmas Day a year ago. That was a real Merry Christmas, Shea. Go to work moment for me. But they stuck. He stuck with him the whole time, and I love that he's enrolling early. And I said this actually earlier to Jordy on the show. Whenever I think it was signing day or day after signing day. But let's not. Is he the number one corner in the country? Yes, that's what his ranking is. Don't, for the kid's sake, lump that he's going to be like Derek Stingley. Like, that is very rare instant impact ability that Stingley has. I love that Ricks is coming in early. He gets to be around Stingley and Jay Ward and Cordell Flott and Ray Darius Jones and a real young group of corners who have some experience now, that have played, that know what it takes. And I think he can probably ease his way into that group with a transition that'll be somewhat seamless. And then you can go into next year with them. And look, we saw how often it was kind of next man up this year. It was, all those guys beyond Stingley. They were playing Ward. They were playing Flott. Jones had been banged up some, but he was getting in games. So I think Ricks is going to play next year. If I'm an LSU fan, I'm happy that they've now got some depth there. I can remember a bowl game, not the last one, but UCF. So that was last year.
Yeah, last year.
They had nobody. Thank God they signed Terrence Alexander. I think he was in Jontre Kirkland, who moved from receiver to DB. They're like the only people playing in the game. So they'll need him. You need a corner as much as you can get one, and he's as talented as they come.
6'2", 195. That's ridiculous size for a corner. You mentioned Stingley. I've gone on record saying that when you look at playing as a freshman and covering as a freshman, I think he's been better than Peterson, Claiborne, Shaq White, Jalen Mills had a really good freshman year. I mean, any of those guys, I think he's been the best as a freshman of all of them.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Is it close?
I mean, it's hard to. Patrick Peterson was such a high-profile recruit.
But he
such
didn't
a freak
really.
athlete.
I mean, how many games did he start? It was like 3 or 4 or 5 games into the season.
I definitely think that Stingley's the best. All right, let's go to the quarterbacks because it's been kind of a hot topic. I watched some tape on Max Johnson. He looks pretty good to me.
His senior year was really good. The Oconee County, and I highly doubt any Oconee County people are listening. They would admit it anyways. They are not a good program. Like, they're usually bad. It's like the Joe Burrow Athens story. Like, we're usually not good. Mettenberger went to Oconee County. He didn't even put up the type of senior year or bring them all the way to the 4A state championship game in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. He was on fire. His little brother's in 10th grade. He's not little. He's probably bigger than he is, but plays some tight end, plays receiver. He was not healthy a year ago. Some other guys were banged up, and Max, just had a bad completion percentage. They didn't have a great year. I think they still won. I think they were like 7 games or whatever. This year they were like 13-1 going into the state championship game. Max at 68% completions. He's a southpaw, so it's funny to watch him throw. We're not used to left-handed quarterbacks, but to see that, I want to see any position, but especially quarterback. I want you to be playing your best football as a senior. And Coach O talked about that, and Lincoln Riley talked about that, a number of coaches on signing day. When we're going through our evals as coaches, we want to make sure, like, were you a complete, beast as a sophomore, and then as a junior and senior, it was kind of just this plateau or downhill. You want him on the up and up. That's what Max Johnson was. His by far best football was this year.
And TJ Finley?
TJ Finley's got upside just because of his size and his arm. I mean, there ain't many 6'6", 240 kids out there who've got an absolute cannon. I'm really interested to see him at LSU and not at Ponchatoula, where his O-line wasn't very good. You've got a weapon or two. If you can put a quarterback into this type of offense with these type of players, let's see how they develop them. I mean, because let's be real, Max Johnson and TJ Finley they've got to be developed. So I'm curious how they develop both those guys. It's clear that both of them have some skills and certainly have some just raw ability and have some size. Look, it's almost like you look at Max Johnson, who's like 6'4.5", whatever, 220, 215 as a 17-year-old in high school is small, because when you see Finley, he is a straight up legit 6'6", 242 or whatever.
One more, we'll close this segment out and talk about where LSU goes from here in the next segment. But is this offensive buzz got LSU some traction down the line with some quarterbacks nationally?
Kaleb Williams is the one I'm watching for next year, especially now that you've got Johnson and Finley in the boat. They're signed, all that. That Williams, number 1 dual threat quarterback in the country, out of Gonzaga on the prep school on the East Coast. Liked LSU this summer. He went to camp. He threw for the staff with Finley and Johnson, and they really liked him. He had an offer, all that. But then you play out this year. And his other top school and he's got a bunch of them, but was a school like Georgia. When you watch LSU play this year versus Georgia playing, they've got handcuffs on Jake Fromm. Joe Burrow's out here winning the Heisman, getting Joe Burrow Stadium, real quick. So I do think that you'll parlay this into something. Garrett Nussmeier is another at quarterback over in the state of Texas, had a really good junior year, but they're not. If you're LSU this year, you can't not, right, Hunt? Whoever the 5 best quarterbacks are in the country, just go spend all your time on those guys.
Yeah.
And I don't mean by the rankings. Do your evals, pick the top 3 or 4, and just go get who at one of them, because you got to strike while the iron's hot here, and there's no hotter time right now to be a quarterback at LSU than at the moment.
It's Lorando Johnson, cornerback from Texas, and then Cameron Jackson from Haynesville. What's the story on those 2 guys?
Cam is just finishing up some academic stuff. I'd expect he signs in February. That was his plan all along. Teammate of Joe Evans, who signed with LSU a year ago on the D-line. I like Cam because he's probably 6'6", 280, so he can play on the D-line or he can play offensive tackle if you need him to be. We saw Dare Rosenthal make that move. So I do like the prospect of Jackson. Johnson did not sign. He hasn't done any official visits. I think he'll have a busy month in January. But he said before that he was kind of looking around, when the numbers crunch started happening. But now with 6 spots, does he become a guy you push for and you try to get into the class, or do they go elsewhere and not use a spot on? He's probably like a nickel. So If you need that, he's there. If you feel like you need to address other needs, then you go address them.
The narrative out there by a lot of people was that they kind of mishandled, I use quotation marks there, the numbers there and what they did over the last month. It's a really difficult job that they've got because there's so few certainties in recruiting. But what's your sense on how things have gone over the last month in terms of the numbers and how they've handled it?
Well, right. That's why O gets paid a lot more than you and I. I'm doing this
Correct.
for free right now.
You don't know what my salary is.
There's nothing coming out my way from this other than love from
Exactly.
you guys.
Go 247, sign up.
Yeah, right. No, for real. I'd look at a situation like this as, oh man, I lost my train of thought. Where are we going?
We were going to, man, I lost mine too. We were talking about how they handled the numbers.
Oh, yeah.
Last
Okay,
month.
so imagine had the 2 receivers not decommitted and you have 4 open spots right now. That's like not many.
No.
So you understand, especially with the number of guys still out there. He talked about transfers, grad transfers, high school players, and we'll talk about a few of them, but 4 wouldn't be many. So I think, and they knew they were in it with Jordan Birch. So that would have been 3 all of a sudden. So you understood now why they were kind of in this situation of how do we trim back a little and give ourselves enough room to finish with the guys we want. I think in anybody who's saying, well, you misplayed the numbers, the only thing right now would be, well, yeah, we didn't know the receivers were going to decommit on us. We knew that we were having to recruit them to the end, but we didn't anticipate both of them, in the 11th hour leaving. So tough to figure out. I mean, I think it's fine. 6 spots it sounds like a lot, but it's really not. Like, you can fill those if you're getting, if you want a handful of whatever needs to address. Let's say you have 3 or 4 and you pick a guy for each spot. Then you've just got a spot or 2 left for if you want to transfer, or if you want to take a best available, or if you're signing 1 or 2 of these guys that are already committed, that are holding off to February. So it can fill up quick on you. I think it was, I don't think we can judge really if it was misplayed or played perfectly until we get past February signing day. We see what they really have.
Everybody was up in arms a couple years ago when they didn't fill the class. How do you not even sign 25? And then they went and got 2 grad transfers that were Cole Tracy and Joe Burrow.
So they weren't bad
things tend to work out. I mean, this staff's pretty good at roster management, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. All right, let's talk about where they go moving forward and fill in those 6 spots that they have to fill. I guess we'll start with the defensive line. Mckinley Jackson's a guy I've heard a lot about. What's the story there?
Yeah, I mean, he has been committed to LSU before. He was 9th or 10th grade committed to LSU when he first started getting offers, and then he said, look, I'm obviously in 9th or 10th grade. Let me look around. And he's held off until he's always said, I want to do it in February. He's going to, when the dead period ends, I think the first weekend kids can go visit colleges again is January 17th, and he'll be at LSU that weekend. But look, Lane Train's back, and I think he's hosting McKinley the week after, and then I think it's A&M after that. So you've got, and Auburn and Bama have been in on him too. So I guess of note, in-state, Kevin knows this. I mean, McKinley Jackson's the number 1 player in Mississippi. Jimbo Fisher knows you went 7-5, and your 5 losses were to the only good 5 teams you played.
Yep.
So these guys have to figure out ways to make a splash on the recruiting trail down the stretch. I don't think LSU can't get him. I just almost think it's like a Jordan Birch situation where, like, 5 teams are probably going to feel okay about where they're sitting and going to have to battle that out. So I won't be surprised if there's, and Orgeron said it, maybe 2 or 3 D linemen that they go after, and you hope that you can come away with maybe 1. But they've had a good D line class so far. They've signed 4 pure hand in the dirt guys and a couple stand up edge rushers. So you're at 6. Let's see if you can get up to 7 maybe, and 8 would be, awesome for them.
Sounds like from afar that Zach Evans is a ton of fun to recover.
Yeah, well, I mean, and now
that's a 5-star running back from Houston for those who aren't familiar.
Now kind of the buzz is that Georgia is trending. It's been just one of those things where Evans really, he's just been all over the map. And I don't mean it in like a trolling type of way. It's just like, I don't think he's very good at like deciding, and like, I'm not in his shoes, but like, I think it's tough for him to be like, okay, I want to go to this school, or, this is my team to beat. At one point it was staying in state at Texas and A&M, and then it was Georgia, and then it was Bama, and then it was LSU, and now you've got classes starting to fill up, and you can see where he's a need at LSU, who doesn't have a running back committed. And in life after Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you don't want to, and in the life of the transfer portal, right? What happens if Edwards-Helaire goes pro and one of your other 3 jumps in the transfer portal and you don't sign a running back? And when was the last time LSU went through a year with 2 scholarship running backs? It's just not how it works. So they've got to be able to sign a running back here. A&M's in the same position. I'm not even sure if A&M has a running back on their roster right now after one of their top guys went into the portal this past week, I think it was, maybe last week. But point being, those two probably really need him. I don't even know if either of them get him. So if I'm LSU, I'm trying for Zach Evans, but I'm making sure that in the next month I figure out a way that, and there are some good running backs out there, I'm getting one of them. I don't care if his last name's Evans or not. I'm going to find somebody.
Got any prospects there that you can recall off the top of your head?
At running back?
Yeah.
I think Jahmyr Gibbs, who's a top 10 running back on 24/7, he's committed to Georgia Tech, but he saw his stock
Georgia
skyrocketed,
Tech, dude,
and said, you know what? I'm going to let this ride right here. I'm going to not sign with you, Georgia Tech, yet. I'm going to see what else is out there. Ohio State, Florida, LSU are all some teams that kind of got through the first signing day and said, yo, still need a running back. Well, you in. So I wouldn't be surprised if they host him in January. He'd be one I'm watching.
Take a rain check on that Georgia Tech offer, bro. I'm going down to Baton Rouge.